What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Kitchen Table Podcast, where business gets done. We've got a very special guest today. I know I say that every week, but I mean that literally every week because they are all very special guests. But we have Freddie Hart in the building today. Freddie does a unique brand of marketing that I think is really cool, and so had to have him on the podcast. He does personally works with a good friend of mine, Todd Price, who we also had on the show. So, Freddie, first of all, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, brother. Can't complain. We've been getting a lot of rain in Georgia, but other than that, life's been good.
Isn't there a song about that? Rainy nights in Georgia?
That I don't know. That I would have to do a little bit of research, but
Uh,
I trust you on that.
yeah, the newest. Well, if you don't know, I was at once a country music singer,
Okay.
a blooming country music singer. Started R&B, then went to I don't know rock,
Yeah,
country, but I don't know, dude. I was just a young man trying to make things happen. That's all. Just pointing me in a direction,
that's
anywhere to
awesome.
compete with fame in my brain.
There you go. You're killing it as far as the blue collar so far. So
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, that's what we're and I think that's a really good segue, man. But to your point, my whole thing is actually not that, not it's just they're all verticals in an attempt to brand myself.
okay.
I want to be the brand. I want Ken Baden, and I say that everybody should mean that. And I think before we even jump into it, that's a great segue into what you do, really, because a personal brand beats anything. You can take that name, or what if somebody was to doesn't matter, right? Like, point is they can't take my name and my brand. My personal brand is one thing that, like, anything that I'm attached to, if I brand myself correctly and appropriately and successfully, everything else benefits. And that's one thing I learned from Bradley a long time ago when I bought one of his, because he successfully branded himself. I bought
Correct.
his software, and in that software, it was, hey, you really need a personal brand. This was years ago, and I was like, man, that's an interesting concept. It's a lot harder to brand a business than it is people. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm happy that that's gaining some traction, but the whole effort's there, and everything else that I do is really get me and build stages for myself and my people, and that way, we can build a brand. And as we continue to come up and we get these resume pieces within our business, then it just continues to push me forward along what I really want to do, which is just work with other people and help them do the same thing, man. So in the blue collar space, but that's just what I have the most experience in. You know what I mean? I started out
Right.
in insurance. If I would have never gotten out of insurance, it would have been that, right? If so sales is really the thing that I'm the most passionate about teaching, and it's starting to kind of segue more into, I don't know, like the sales systems and implementing those into the businesses, and then also just helping to start these businesses. So there's a lot of things as I pick up that I enjoy doing, but really it's just the aspect of working with somebody else and helping them do it. So talking about the importance of a personal brand, I'm sure you would agree, right? How important that is.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that in today's world, a personal brand can help you accelerate your growth for anything else that you're doing versus any other thing in the world. So if I own a roofing company and then all of a sudden I want to start solar and I don't want to necessarily have the same company doing solar, well, all of a sudden it's easy to do because of the fact that I have a personal brand. I think that we're seeing that in lots of different divisions because I think that there's a point in business where Warren Buffett once said it. I heard it on a podcast, but he had a buddy who went to college with him, and his buddy got into the steel industry and he got into doing Berkshire Hathaway and investments. And his buddy wasn't necessarily as rich as him. He did well, but basically, Warren Buffett says not about how hard you're rowing sometimes, it's about the boat that you're in. And I think that as you start to scale up in business, what I've seen is a lot of guys, they change the boat that they're in, and because of their personal brand, they're very successful at it. A great example of that is our buddy Todd Price. Todd's my dear friend. I work with Todd, and Todd was great at selling fitness when he was younger, but that wasn't necessarily the boat to get him the lifestyle that he wanted. Transitions to roofing, and now has everything he's ever wanted as far as the financial success, team building, all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that at the basis in 2024, when it comes to business growth, you have to really examine your personal brand as a whole.
I couldn't agree more, man. And I think that the more people who understand that and start utilizing things like social media, and I think I really want to focus on that, right? Like breaking down, like, what we try to do in this podcast. I want to have more fun because I feel like a lot of these episodes are really, man, like business, business, business. But I guess that's the premise of the show, man. The kitchen table. There's a play on, I started door to door, and that's a big part of my background. Really, I
Yeah.
started in home sales. I mean, it wasn't door to door. I was provided leads, then it was door to door. But regardless of what it was, if it was in home selling, we needed to get to that kitchen table to get that contract
I
executed.
like that. I was trying to figure out the name, but then I listened to a couple other of your podcasts, and I really like that name as a whole.
It's a big part of especially in our first training in the first company we were at. It was like, you don't do it at the couch, you don't do it in their front porch, you don't do it at their door. You talk business and execute business at their kitchen table. That is where people discuss business of this magnitude, and it makes sense. But now we've kind of broadened our scope, and we're talking, marketing and personal branding, because all of this stuff plays, and this is,
Right.
I don't think though that people realize how much this plays. And for me, it's been the biggest eye opener over the course of the last year. So up until this point, I kind of knew, and oh yeah, I'm going to start that later, right? I guess I didn't think. I think I had to have more, I guess, accolades or more success or whatever, right? I kept moving the bar before I was actually going to start promoting myself as a brand. But people want to see that journey, I think. You know what I mean? Like if you just show them the destination, it's like, well, that's cool, man. But especially for myself, coming from where I come from, like that's a pretty cool story. And there's a lot of people that have similar stories, weight loss journeys. Um, and you're missing out on the opportunity to let people in on that and really brand yourself that way too. So I guess let's just, if you would please, and I don't want you to give away the whole, we'd love for you to educate our listeners on sort of how and where to start, but just some basics on like, hey, you don't have to wait. Cause that's a question we got. Remember, I don't know if you got that one, but I was on a Zoom with Ryan, and Matt asked like, well, when do you start branding? Do you wait until you kind of have some stuff, or, and he was like,
Right.
so I thought about that, but I'll let you touch on that, kind of how
Yeah.
to,
So it's I watched the movie. You seen the movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can, with
yeah,
Tom Hanks? Okay. There's a scene in that movie where he basically says he's a professor at a college, and somebody asked him, and I think we've talked about this before, but somebody asked him, they said, "Well, how'd you become a professor if you didn't read the whole book that you were teaching?" He was like, "I didn't need to read the whole book to be a professor. I just needed to be one chapter ahead of everybody in order to teach them what I had known." And so I think that you're spot on when it comes to talking about promoting a personal brand. People like the journey, but I think if you really sat down and you wrote everything that you would consider yourself knowledgeable in, or you would consider yourself an expert in, you would realize that there's something that you could teach a lot of people out there. A great example of this is a lot of these gurus out here who make a lot of money on courses. As somebody like yourself who's starting to promote your personal brand, if you were to buy one of those 497 courses or 997 courses, you would open it up and you would see that you probably know about 80% of the stuff already in the course, right? But the fact of the matter is, you're somebody who's learning about personal brand. You're somebody who's learning about marketing, right? A lot of people are literally at square one, so the information in there is valuable. So I say all that to say that the key is to start your journey and really document the journey of what you're doing day to day. And then, like we've talked about before, the key that I would tell anybody when it comes to video creation is FAQs, myths, and expertise. And I've said it once, but I'll continue to say it over and over. FAQs are frequently asked questions in your industry. So if I'm in roofing, it's, well, what does my insurance cover? Like, why? What should I ask a company when they come to my house to try to replace my roof? Right? Like, figure out those questions that people often ask. The second one is myths in your industry. There's a lot of myths that we talk about, whether it's blue collar, white collar, whatever industry it is. Start to debunk the myths in your industry because that will build that authenticity. And then the third one is expertise, right? If you are ahead of the journey, I tell people if you're that one chapter ahead, you know something that your general audience who you're trying to target doesn't know. And so it's important to document that entire process as a whole and show your expertise. So those are the three things I would do as far as video. Now, there's something I tell people when it comes to marketing your personal brand as a whole. I call it the marketing pyramid. So if you think about a pyramid, the top tier is your message, the second tier is the mode, and the third tier is the medium, right? So your message has to be extremely specific. Now, you can go into different things, but when it comes to like how you want to portray yourself on social media, you can have a concrete message as to who you are and what you do. So for me, right now, what I use for my message is my name is Freddie Hart, and I help CEOs market their brands in the companies that they run. So that's my message, and that's kind of how I stay concrete as a whole and make that happen. The next thing I would tell you is the mode, right? So I think a lot of people are always focused on video, and video is good, but if you can really display your expertise in a different way, such as written word or photography or things of that nature, double down on that. Now, the reason why that tier is bigger than
Like a post, like a long form post,
yeah,
or
exactly. Like some people don't like being in front of cameras, but they like to write. So if you can figure out multiple modes into telling your message, whether it be audio, video is always going to work the best, but some people just don't like being on video. So if it's audio, if it's photography, if it's written word, figure out which mode works best for you. And then the third tier is medium. And the reason why that's big is because it allows you to focus on the most mediums possible. So for example, if I was a long form, I like to write guy who doesn't like video, my first mode would be a picture and a long form caption on Instagram. My next one would be a blog post. My next one would be long form LinkedIn, long form Facebook. And so what I have to do is you have to have self awareness when it comes to promoting your personal brand, because if you don't have self awareness, you can't double down on your strengths, if that makes sense.
yeah, that does actually. And I mean, we're trying to figure out the formula, so to speak, now, right? It was a lot of me posting daily, and you have the whole edge rank system. Ryan teaches this.
Right.
And I had some success with that. We got our followers up a lot. I mean, but you got to remember, my Facebook was private last October. When I say last October, I mean 2022. So not 23, but so a little over a year now. I had no followers. I mean, I don't think I had any. I had maybe 2,000 friends. I don't know. I can't remember. I didn't have many of anything. So I've doubled that since the last year, but it's not like it's crazy or anything. I mean, our Instagram is more, but I've just been putting content out. But regardless of that, right? Like, and at first we got a lot more followers, but I think it was originally no video. It was just long form, just edge ranked, and it was a couple videos a week, and now it's a video a day and mixing in some long form in there. And thank you. And I don't know, just trying to find what works, man. I guess this is playing with it. And then that's a good point too. Like I'm in the journey phase still currently, right? I don't have a million followers. I don't have, I haven't broken, I haven't gotten viral or anything like that. I'm building. But you got to start somewhere. And
And I think sometimes, if I'm honest, going viral can be somewhat overrated because, like, if you have, let's say, 10 videos that get 5,000 views each, that's 50,000 views with you displaying your expertise. Sometimes you can go viral, and there are some people who focus on going viral, but going viral doesn't always necessarily equate to business success, right? So, like, if I go on TikTok and I have a viral video, yeah, there may be some people who want to reach out to me about marketing, but if a million people view the video, more than likely 950,000 can't can't use my services. So I think it's one of these things where like sometimes if you stay consistent, and that's what we learned in Apex, you benefit more versus trying to focus on going viral every single video.
yeah, I could actually totally see how that would be more valuable. I mean, I'd like to go viral, but
Right.
now we're pretty consistent with our video views, and they're coming up, man. Like we're seeing, but I guess the reason I brought that up was I had a friend of mine that was like, well, it's fear and I don't know where to start. And I said, dude, I don't have a ton of views on all of my videos. I mean, it started with a couple hundred and still we sometimes only get a couple hundred. And then it might be 1,500 to 2,000. I mean, we've had one that's had like 50, 60, which is awesome. We boosted it, but like just non-boosted posts, 15 to 3,000, you know, I think one we organically had like 14. But my point is you gotta start somewhere, man. And if you don't,
Right.
you won't get anywhere. You know what I mean? So we just consistently jam this out. I mean, we're filming content right now. You know what I mean? Like, and then two, you might have something to say about this clarity of message. Like, I think for me, originally, I didn't like the idea of the whole like blue collar ballers thing because I wanted to be more than that. And I don't mean that in like, it's just all I've ever done really. But see, Ryan kind of was like, well, that's the point, right? That's your area of expertise,
Right.
and I'm like, well, I've got a consulting company that does this. I've got a roofing company. I've got a remodeling company. I've built a few of these. He's like, well, yeah, that's why, you know what I mean? You might want to focus on that first. And then, you know what I mean? You can take yourself and brand you and help more people once you have that platform. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, like I said, I love being a part of Apex. And I just, from marketing, it always brings value. But I think that Stuman's spot on as far as just focusing on your expertise, because at the end of the day, right, if you try to be something that you're not, the market will see that. But if you already have separated yourself from an expertise perspective, it's just easy to double down on that. And so, like, as far as creating content, the blue collar ballers, right? If we look at anybody who's of prominence for the most part in the business world before social media and personal brand, a lot of us know them for one thing, right? Like, we don't necessarily, a great example of this is Mark Cuban, right? Everybody knows him as the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, but unless you do your research, then you learn about all the other stuff. And then when the TV show came out, you know him as the guy with Dallas Mavericks or Shark Tank, right? But he's doing so much other stuff, but that's the stuff that he doubles down on and lets the world see. So yeah, I agree with Stuman 100% on that.
Yeah, I think I wanted to be like, sales, and which is broad, but and that's kind of what I liked about it was I wanted to be able to help. And blue collar is pretty broad, but at any rate, his point is valid in that like Andy, I mean, he started in mortgages. Andy started in cars. Grant started in cars. Grant started with Grant Rants. You know what I mean? Like everybody starts somewhere, right? In their area of expertise, and then they come up and grow up. So I agree, and that's where I was like, okay, you know what? I get that. Let's double down and focus on that and get that going and build that successfully and focus on who I can help now, especially while I'm in it. You know what I mean? I'm still in it. I think that was why, because I was like, man, I'm surrounded by like, you know what I mean? Like my consulting company, I wanted to do something a little different. It's really what it was, selfishly. But I can do that in the future. I can help people now being in it. Um, and it's been great, man. But I guess listening to it and being open to criticism, constructive criticism, and not being afraid are important pieces to getting started doing this. But eventually, you just got to get started. But I guess you can talk about this again too. Is like just knowing what you want to put out there. And here's what I'm getting at. I have a friend of mine that works here and also does a lot of social media content and does really well. And he made a post the other day about like, hey, I get asked this question a lot. How do where do you come up with ideas for content? And he was like, I think you should sit with yourself and really evaluate like who you are and what's the message you want to put out there. And this is really shortening his message. But I thought there was a lot of value in that because one thing I noticed even recently, like we kind of, when I say we, I mean my team, we're looking at like what message are we trying to put out? And it's like, you want to mix up your videos as far as like, hey, I want to show like the family side of me and not just always business, 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 but like, ultimately, what's the overall message? Like, what are you trying to put out there? What is it that you want to contribute? And getting that clear. So it's while you might show different sides of yourself, you're still consistent with who you are and why, who's my demographic? Who am I trying to talk to and what am I offering? You know what I mean? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
for sure. I think Grant Cardone, I agree with some of the stuff he says. I disagree with some of the stuff he says, but in his book 10X, yeah. I mean, everybody in business is wishy-washy with Grant. But there's a part in his book in 10X where he says he wanted at one point to be the go-to guy that when somebody associated sales training, they associated his name. And so that's kind of, I think, how I would, if somebody wanted to get started, is figure out what you want to be associated with, right? Like for me, it's marketing, it's fitness, it's faith. Like those are the things that I know that I want to be associated with. So as soon as somebody thinks of somebody who's involved in all of those aspects, I come to their mind as a first thought. And so that's really how I would tell anybody is figure out what you want to be associated with, and then from there you can start to create content around that. That way, as soon as somebody's thinking of something, they think of you first. So right now, like you're speaking at the Blue Collar Ballers, right? And so it's one of these things where your brand has put you as a staple in the industry when it comes to blue collar. So because of that, you get the opportunity to speak. And so that's what I tell everybody is like just work backwards from there. It's like, okay, if you want to be associated with contracting, if you want to be associated with custom home builds, right? Like, what do you have to put out that way? As soon as somebody is in a conversation about a custom home build, about contracting, about a remodel or something like that, what type of content do you have to put out that as soon as somebody thinks about that, they think about you, and as soon as they have the opportunity, they reach out to you? So that's really what I would tell anybody getting started is figure out what you want to be known for and associated with, and then create content around that. Like I said, a great buddy of ours and friend of ours is Todd. And so, like, when we do Todd's personal brand content, there's a couple things, right? He wants to be known for fitness and bodybuilding, for roofing, and for mindset. So we create content around that. That way, as soon as somebody thinks about one of those three aspects, he's top of mind. And if they're looking to get somebody to speak, if they're looking at coaching, they reach out to him because of the content that we've put out. There's a clear association with those themes with him. So that's how I would tell anybody to get started is figure out what you want to be known for and what you have an expertise in, and then create content around that.
It's a great answer, man. And I'll wrap up with this. There's gentlemen like I think about a lot of the folks on social media today, a lot of what we see are like shorts and clips of like podcasts and even the value in starting a podcast. Like, what is it? Is his name Ryan Pineda? Does that sound familiar? And then
Yeah, Ryan.
Chris Wilkes is this his Insta. I don't even know what these guys do in terms of like, what did they, I don't know what they did in business, but I assume they're somehow associated with business or a business podcast. Like, you just kind of figure like, okay, these guys are successful or have been. But like even Brad, man, I didn't know what he did at the time, right? I just knew like, oh, this guy must be successful, and he did something with sales because he's selling content based on that. It wasn't until later I realized he was a car guy, and then he has Lightspeed, and I don't even know what those other guys do, but I see just based on their proxy to these other folks and who they're having on their podcast that they must be of some significance. So it's wild, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like the association by proxy and the value there as well. I'm a big relationships guy. And I think that, because you figure Andy Elliott, guy's hot right now, right? He's
Right.
in the sales training, in the content game currently, he is on fire, right? Like him, don't like him, doesn't matter. I don't think he cares. And, but he's a perfect example, right? And I work with him as well. And I say that because I see now it's like he's doing something with Pat Bet David. You know, it's like who he's getting surrounded by now. I'm like, man, I'd love to meet those guys. And like, if I'm tied with Andy and I'm tied with Ryan, I'm tied with this guy, and I can meet this guy and meet this guy. I mean, it's just like the more, and Brad Lee talks about it, the more hands you shake, the more money you make, but really the more opportunities you have too, right? Like, networking, man, it's just you never know what value that could bring. And even just getting them on a podcast or being on their podcast or getting content with them. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know where I'm necessarily going with that outside of there's something to be said by putting yourself out there, but also looking for those relationships. For instance, I started with like some of the big fish around here, and I had several of them on my podcast. And you wouldn't know who they were if you weren't local. But if you are local, you're going to want to listen to those episodes because they're the Todds and the guys. I mean, one of them is one of the biggest CEOs in this entire region. You know what I mean? And like most
Yeah.
people know who he is locally, but you know, and he speaks all over. But he doesn't care about. He doesn't even have a Facebook or an Insta. He has a LinkedIn, but he doesn't
Yeah.
care about stuff. You know what I mean? He's just an absolute fucking maniac. And the guy's got 4 or 5 businesses that he's the CEO of. I don't know how he does the things he does or how he has the time to do the things he does. Um, but I guess that's what makes him him, right? And he came on here for 2 hours. I told you this is
Wow,
a
that's awesome.
30-minute podcast. He requested to come in person and rattled off a 2 hour episode. He's probably gonna listen to this because he listens to the show, but and I didn't stop him one bit, of course, because I'm like, A, he's my mentor, and B, I'm like, dude, this guy's 2 hours of his time. That's, I mean, if you really equate that to what it's worth, you know, I was flattered. So, and for him to come in and do that, but I don't know. I guess where I was going with that is personal branding. It certainly doesn't hurt to put yourself out there and try to make some connections and don't be afraid, I guess, because for me, it was just a matter of reaching out and asking for some help or asking if I could get you on the podcast or asking if I could pick your brain and I think a lot of people let fear hold them back from it. You know,
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to that connection, I have a 4 quadrant thing that I talk to people about when it comes to personal branding. I say that there's 2 factors of branding and business. There's credibility and there's being known. And so if you're credible and you're known, right, you'll be a staple. If you're credible but not known, you're just going to get frustrated that other people are putting content out, right? If you're known but you're not credible, okay, you'll get exposed by the market. And then if you're not credible and you're not known, it doesn't matter regardless. And so I think when it comes to personal branding, the personal branding aspect that it helps most CEOs are the people who are credible and not known, right? Because they already have the stories, they already have the expertise, they already have the body of work. And it's a matter of just putting them out there for the world to learn about them to connect the dots, right? Because a lot, like, for example, I dealt with CEOs like that who we've worked with, who in the beginning you sit down and talk to them and they own all this real estate and they run all these companies. And I tell them, I'm like, we need to get all of that online because as soon as we get all of that online, what will start to happen is people will start to want to learn more about you and they'll develop that relationship. So yeah, I mean, you're spot on with it. And I think that you're seeing right now what's happening is people, Patrick Bet David is a great example of that, where he was credible, he just wasn't known, and then he doubled down on his personal brand, and now he's both. Right.
right.
Same with Brad Lee, right? Like Brad Lee had Lightspeed VT before he started like really doubling down on his personal brand, and it benefited him in the long run because now he's credible and he's known.
Yeah.
So that's really the key when it comes to like really being a staple in the industry is you have to be both of those in order to separate yourself from other people.
Doesn't hurt that, you know, old Brad's a fairly good looking son of a gun, so I'm sure that doesn't hurt.
I
Not bad looking for an old man. No, hey, I hope I look as sharp as he does. I don't even think he's that old, but
think he's 54.
yeah, hell man. I actually met him in person a couple times. Dude's pretty, you know, he keeps himself I mean, that's his brand. So I mean, he puts a lot of value and stock in his brand. You know, he keeps himself up well, man. So Brad's probably one of my favorites, honestly. I like
Yeah,
him.
we got to meet him when Todd was on
Show.
Dropping Bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to Vegas in June and we filmed there and we got to meet him. He was a pretty cool guy for sure.
Yeah, I told him I was gonna be on it, and I'm sure he was like, yeah, okay. But I will be. I'll be on it. I'll be on it sooner than later, you know. I was on Andy's podcast over the winter, Ryan's, so I'll but you know, I want to make sure too, you know, my priorities, my business right now is just number one A, period. You know, we're scaling and all of these things. So I've kind of had to like step back a little bit from some of these other things like the coaching and so on, even just temporarily, but and be very selective on what I take on. But content doesn't stop because the brand can't step back. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right,
got
for sure.
pushing forward. So and you know, you can make time for that, man. Like Roger's here, he's got a camera. You can worst case, you can follow me daily. You know what I mean? And get some clips that way. So
And
uh
I think you play a bigger game, right? Like I think we've talked about this before, but like when you play a bigger game in business as far as like selling an e-commerce product, it's a little bit harder, but like when you're selling 10, 20, $30,000 roofs, right? If you can hire, I tell people in blue collar, if you can hire somebody to do content for you for let's say 2,500 a month, right? And all in for the year you're in 30,000 and you get one roof, right? And now a bunch of people know you as a staple in your industry and your content's out there forever. That investment's going to pay itself over 5, 10, 20 times in perpetuity. But it's one of those things that people just have to be able to understand that, okay, it is an investment and it's not something that's instantaneous. You and me have talked about it before. Like anything that somebody tells you is instantaneous in marketing, they're obviously lying to you because if it was instantaneous, it would be way more valuable, right? So, like, if I said I could get you 1 million followers in 30 days, you would have people with money left and right paying 500,000, 1 million, multiple millions of dollars to make that happen. But it's just not true for the most part. And so I think that it's an investment and it's a long game, but like it's the one piece of marketing, and you know this running a big company, it's the one piece of marketing that lasts forever. Like nothing else in marketing lasts forever except creating content at scale.
Right. Um, that's actually a really good point, but because I've experienced that over the last year. You know what I mean? And what I mean by
Right.
experience the investment and the expenses and the build and it's like, man, like, but it's a new, our goal was, okay, we got to build this, and of course brand, and you get a roof from it. That's one thing, but we also have this other thing that's just like the coaching and the consulting. So we have three different areas that we could hopefully benefit from with this personal brand. And the roofing part we hadn't really considered. I mean, I don't know. There's probably one at least, but
But even in coaching, right? Like let's say I don't know your services as a whole, but like let's say somebody had a coaching program that 1 year paid them $30,000, right? Well, let's say they take that 30,000 and they roll it into a team to help them to create content. Well, if you get one more client, you make the money back, but after a year, you're going to look back and you're going to have all this content on the internet and it's going to organically grow. Like I've had it happen to me where I'll shoot stuff for my personal brand on Instagram and I'll put it on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. And I'll have a client reach out and say, "Hey, I saw this video. I'd love to talk about getting videos done for my business." Right? Like that video in essence cost me 40 or $50 to get edited and shot, but in the long run, it ends up closing 4 and 5 figure deals. So I think that when it comes to, like I said, content, it is an investment, but the people who make the investment now, they're going to see it pay off in the long run in the next couple of years. And that when you think about building a business, from what I've seen from the people ahead of me in years versus just months, those are the people who really build mainstay like titans in industries. Those are the people who are really separating yourself. Like Alex Hormozy has said it before, but I've met successful people, and those successful people, you'll always hear them talk, and they'll always say, "Well, in 5 years, I want to do this, or in 10 years, I want to do this." But you'll go online to some scammy thing on how to make money, and it'll teach you how to make money in 30 days, or 6 months, or 3 months. And it's like, okay, clearly, when you listen to it, you clearly can hear the dialogue of successful people versus average people. And I think content's the same way, is that if you look at it in multiple years, 5 years, 10 years, you'll look back on it and go, okay, yeah, this was probably the best investment I could ever make.
couldn't agree more, man. And I picked up one client last year, probably maybe not so much from the video content, but just from really putting myself out there. And we wanted to take on at least one consulting client. That was really what I was like. And there was a couple different opportunities, but we ended up taking a solar company and teaching them the insurance roofing model in 90 days. And now we have a white labelable product that we can read
Yeah.
and pick up if we so choose, if we find the right fit. Because again, my time's tight, but like now we know, okay, we can pick up, because we've done it, we can pick up, a solar company should we find the right fit, and we can, white label all of this for them and get them up and running in insurance restoration roofing in 90 days, right? And we charge 60 grand for that, right? And so like, and they made that back, as in 2 roofs, right? So like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's nothing, trust me. I was originally like, man, I don't know, but Point is I don't know that we would have got that if I hadn't. I don't think I would have. I think that it's the personal brand, putting myself out there, establishing myself as a voice of authority in the market, and now I have the resume builder to show, hey, look, yeah, you can go and speak to this person. They've got the proofs in the pudding, and they're happy to do it. Freddie, where can people find you if they want to see you, your services, what you do, how you do it? Where can they find you?
So I am FRHART and the number 2 on all social medias. The best place that I like to connect is both Facebook and Instagram. And then if you want to learn about what we do, the services, I've got a course on how to create content using AI that's coming out probably in the next couple of weeks. You can go to frheart2.com and learn about all that stuff. So that's the best way to connect for sure.
Awesome, man. Check it out. Check my guy out. He is very talented, works with Todd, and we would love to have you back again soon, man. We'll see you next time, brother. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, no problem, brother. I enjoyed it.